Welcome to today's onboard workshop. My name is Michelle Greenblatt and I'll be conducting the session. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So as I said, my name is Michelle Greenblatt. I'm part of the client success team here. Just before I get into it, I want to let you know that all your microphones will be muted for the duration of the presentation. But if you'd like to chat in any questions that you have, or even just to say yes, if you can see my screen, if you can hear me okay, go ahead and chat that in just for my own peace of mind so I can make sure you can all view the session. And just in case, this is being recorded and will be available afterwards in our resource center if you'd like to view it later. All right, so a little bit of background on me. As I said, my name is Michelle. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2014. I worked at a private investment partnership in New York shortly thereafter, mostly focused on long value stocks, and then a technology startup company in Philadelphia before joining Chaikin. I work very closely with both Joe Bicella and Mark Chaikin as part of our client success team. We aim to work with all of our subscribers to ensure that they make a profitable return on their investment with Chaikin. So that's a little on me. The purpose of today, we have our onboard workshop every day at 2 p.m. And really what we aim to do hang on a sec. Sorry about that. Everyone's microphone should be muted. Anyway, the purpose of today is to go over our methodology of Chaikin, right? So what you should do every single day when you use Chaikin. We'll go over kind of our step-by-step guide as well as a tour of the platform overall. So if you're a new subscriber and you would like to know all the functionality, all the features, what buttons do what, we can go over that as well. And at the end, we'll have a live Q&A where we can answer some questions, and I'll actually go through it in a live demo of the platform. So I highly, highly recommend that you ask questions. This is supposed to be an interactive session. It's really for you. So if there's anything that you need further clarification on or that you're wondering about, definitely go ahead and chat it in, and I'd be happy to answer it. Just really quick, this is how you get to the Resource Center. As I said, this session is being recorded. If you click the stack of books in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you should just click Resource Center. When you get to Resource Center, it's actually a whole page of documents and links that will be very useful to you, whether you're a new subscriber or a returning one. You would simply click under the first header, Educational Webinars, just click Subscriber Session Recordings, or right underneath that, you can schedule a session if you'd like to attend our other sessions. Speaking of which, this is our calendar, and I'll just briefly go through. All of these times are in Eastern Time. Our pre-market session occurs on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. That session is probably one of our most highly attended sessions. If you've been to a couple of these daily workshops and you're confident that you've established, a really consistent and effective strategy to use Chaikin, but you still want to stay engaged, still get kind of our take on where the market has been and where it's headed, I highly recommend attending that session. And if you're unable to, they're all recorded and are available in the Resource Center. Our option session occurs every day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, if you're new to options, if you're an experienced options trader and you're looking to get some more clarification on how to evaluate option strategies within Chaikin, this is a great session. Again, also all recorded, and all of these sessions are held in the same format as we're using now, right? So you can ask questions, have them answered in real time, as opposed to, calling in or emailing in, and you might have to wait a little bit. This is pretty much an immediate response. Finally, Mondays at 4:15 p.m., we have our open forum sessions with John Schlitz. He's our chief market strategist. You would recognize him from Morning Insights. He's very, very experienced on Wall Street, gives great technical analysis of the market. Some people just swear by his commentary, and they come to his session every Monday because he gives his own take on the market, and will also be answering questions. So I highly recommend attending all or any of our sessions. There's no limit on how many you can attend, so definitely check them out. Right now, I would love to hear from you. I would love to learn about your strategy, what type of investor or trader you are, if you're more interested in buying and holding stocks. If you've seen Sandy's webinars, that's the strategy she likes to focus on. Some people are very interested in options. You get all kinds of different options traders if you're interested in that, or maybe you want stocks that return a great dividend. A lot of our subscribers are looking to generate some extra cash, so you might be focused on dividend stocks. And also tell me about your desired time horizon. If you're a swing trader, that would be denoted by entering and exiting a position in 1 to 3 weeks. Intermediate would be 1 to 6 months, and long term would be 6 months or greater. But some people look to hold stocks for several years. So go ahead and chat in. Let me know what you're interested in. I'll just wait a second. The reason I'm asking is just so, sorry about that. Oh man. Sometimes that happens with my mouse. It gets a little excited. The reason I ask is really just so that I can go over some examples at the end. Particularly if you're interested in options, I can briefly go over through our options play module within the platform. So go ahead and let me know. I see some people chatted in. Thank you. All right, great. Okay, so as I said, the purpose of today, we want to establish our methodology and then go through a quick tour. And our methodology is kind of in 2 big steps. So the first is evaluating the market, and the second is evaluating stocks. And when we evaluate the market, there's kind of 3 sub-steps that we like to follow. First is understanding the charts. What does that mean? Okay, when you open up Chaikin, you want to make sure that you understand all of the technical indicators we're showing you and what conclusions you can draw from them. Second, we want to analyze the spider sectors. So if we are analyzing the performance of the market, we want to also integrate that with the performance of the sectors and see which ones are improving or deteriorating respectively. And finally, we want to integrate that all with market insights. Market insights is the expert commentary from Mark Chaikin. So I'm going to go through each of these steps with you now. Before I do that, though, I always forget that this is here, but we have an excellent resource available to you now. It's brand new. We actually just had our first session this week, and we got a really great response. One subscriber said this is exactly what he was looking for. It gave a very specific explanation and review of how to use Chaikin best. This is the most in-depth explanation and educational experience that we provide right now. Today is going to be kind of a brief overview of everything, but if you really want to get an expert understanding, I highly recommend attending Chaikin Market Academy. If you want to learn more about the curriculum or register, just check out the link here. It's www.chaikinanalytics.com/academy. And we have another set of sessions starting next week. I believe we'll also have one the first week of June. So definitely check that out. All right. Assessing the technicals of the chart. If you're a new subscriber and you're unfamiliar with this layout of a chart, I'm just going to quickly go through what each of the lines mean and how to interpret them. Each green price bar that you see is actually representing 1 day. If you click the crosshair symbol in between the 1 and 5 year view, again, you can switch between a 1 year or a 5 year view if you simply click this toggle. You would click this.
Muted. Unmuted.
Sorry about that. Sometimes my microphone gets muted. You would simply click the crosshairs toggle and you could switch between each day and see the relative high, low, close, exact measurements of money flow and overbought, oversold. But just mainly know that each green vertical line is 1 day. The 3 white dotted lines that you see, the top and bottom are going to be your Chaikin bands, which are similar to Keltner channels or Bollinger bands if you're familiar with using those. They're volatility bands, and they're calculated around the center white dotted line, which is a 21-day exponential moving average. The way that you use these Chaikin bands, the closer that the price bars get to the top band, the more likely they are to dip back down, and the closer they get to the bottom band, the more likely they are to go back up. You can use these bands in conjunction with our overbought, oversold indicator, which you'll see located below money flow right here. We like to say that they kind of work in tandem. They're kind of like a dynamic duo. Overbought, oversold is an 100-point scale, but these 30 and 70 marker lines are here for your reference. So basically, When this green, it's a stochastic indicator. So when the green line goes above the 70 marker line, it's overbought. And when it goes below the 30 marker line, it's oversold. And the reason we say they work in tandem is that you can see, as you can see here, the closer it gets to the top bands, the closer it gets to overbought, the more likely it is to dip back down, as we see here. And it matches up with the oversold. So the fluctuations of overbought, oversold usually work in conjunction with the fluctuations in the proximity to these Chaikin bands. Finally, this orange line here is going to be your 200-day double exponential moving average, also known as the long-term trend line. And what we look for in this is usually if we want to see a bullish outlook, we want this line itself to not only be moving upwards, but we also want the price bars to be above that line, above the long-term trend line. And finally, last but not least, Chaikin money flow. Probably what Mark is most famous for inventing in the 1980s, measures institutional investment. So periods of green represent periods of buying pressure on the part of institutions, and periods of red represent selling pressure on the part of institutions. And when I look at this chart, it's the SPY, by the way, I forgot to mention that initially. We look at the SPY, it's the ETF of the S&P 500. And the reason that we look at it is because it's a great indicator of the health of the market overall. And I try to keep track of this to get an idea of how the market's been performing and how it's likely to perform in the future. What I see here are these two W-shaped bottoms, and recently I've been comparing and contrasting the two and trying to get a better outlook on how we're likely to do in the future. So just looking at the technicals, I see that coming out of the W-shaped bottom last fall, we had a sharp increase in money flow and then a sharp decrease. Conversely, out of the second W-shaped bottom, which is also known as a market correction, I see that money flow is much more steady and gradual, which to me indicates a much more stable market where the growth might not be super exciting, but it might be more sustainable. I also see that we're short-term oversold, which leads me to believe that there's still more room to grow. Again, paying attention to that dynamic duo. We're close to the bottom bands. We're close to oversold. There could be some room to grow, but given the past performance, and we'll go into this later with Mark and his commentary, that growth might just be minimal, and we might be kind of hovering around our short-term support and resistance levels within our trading range. What is support? What is resistance? Support are kind of the lows that we see where we haven't dipped below them, and we usually see that in the 2000 to 2050 range. And our resistance would be the ceiling, right? The high point that we haven't broken out above. And our last high, I believe, was last July, and that was 2,135, I believe. But either way, that's our resistance level that we will continually test. But whether or not we can actually break through will indicate whether we have a more bearish or bullish outlook on the market overall. Second, we want to analyze with the power gauge. Specifically, we want to pay attention to how the sectors are performing over time. So what we see after the February 11th low is that we have indeed had a rally. You know, last week we experienced a little bit of a dip, but overall the power of our differentials, so the ratio of bulls to bears in each sector respectively, have been increasing. However, we do see that these sectors can have significant effects on the performance of the market overall. Namely, this week, retail has just been getting crushed. John Schlitz, in his commentary this morning, said that, you know, just negative earnings reports have kind of brought the whole market down. So important to kind of pay attention to the effect that they have overall, but also areas where you might look for potential bullish candidates. So, you know, if you see that healthcare, financials, and materials have been improving over the past couple of weeks, those might be areas that you look for bullish candidates. And if you wanted to look in even more detail in those respective sectors, you would look to do so in our new sector view. So you can check out financials, which are the top holdings in each sector, the top performers, and maybe add those to a watch list. The sector view is brand new. We only added this a couple weeks ago. Just an example where we get all of our ideas from our subscribers who ask for, you know, greater information, more details, and we're constantly innovating around that. We will be having a power gauge rating for ETFs shortly in the next couple of weeks. It's been in development for a while. I know we've been talking about it, but it is on the horizon and will be a very exciting and useful feature for all of our subscribers. Finally, we want to integrate with our expert analysis, and I've kind of outlined for you. If you'll recall, the Resource Center you get at the top right-hand corner of the screen by clicking the stack of books. Immediately next to it on the left-hand side, you'll see a light bulb icon. If you click that, you'll be able to access both market and morning insights. You do get emailed both of these articles, but if you're anything like me, you get a ton of emails and it can be hard to keep track of them. I actually prefer to look at it within the site itself because you can compare and contrast between different articles very quickly. And I'm just going to go through two pieces of Mark's commentary from last weekend's article. If you'll see, I just kind of reiterated what he said with the short-term support and resistance levels, where he said 2000, 2040, and the upside is limited to 2100, and that we're likely to continue to trade within this range, that there might be some growth, but the growth will be limited. And again, the big impact that's happening on the market now is earnings season, and there's 10 days left. This week has definitely been interesting. Some have been disappointing. As I said, Nordstrom has not been performing well. Retail has been beaten down in the past and continues to be beaten down this week. This is just another example of how Chaikin can really give you a competitive edge over the rest, where we were bearish on a bunch of these stocks recently. And, you know, while they may have looked like value buys if they were cheap, if we were extremely bearish and had a bearish outlook, we really, you know, you would have saved a lot of money, you know, had you had Chaikin and invested or chosen to not invest in some of these stocks. So that was it for our market analysis. The importance of analyzing the market overall is to make sure that you know what type of outlook to have when investing, and also recognize where the market's likely to head, so you have a good idea of how your stock is likely to perform in that environment, because, you know, all of these things happen in context. So now we're going to go over evaluating a stock, and we like to do that in two steps. First is qualifying the stock. Second is establishing your timing. So when we qualify, we want to make sure that it's a stock that's worth being involved in the first place, and we have a few criteria that are outlined that are really good indicators of what a classic bull might be, a classic bull being one that's statistically likely to outperform the market in the next couple of months. Then we want to go over our timing, and that's going to be mainly a function of money flow, relative strength, and also our overbought, oversold indicator. But I think this will be better illustrated in some examples. So as I said, should I even be involved in this stock? This is the criteria that we look at. It's in our Finding Long and Short Ideas document, which you can find in the Resource Center. It gives you kind of a checklist of what to look at when you're trying to identify a classic bull or a classic bear. One thing I want to draw your attention to is that we look for a very bullish or bullish rating with persistent green in a classic bull. What do we mean by persistent? We want to make sure that for a classic bull, the bullish rating isn't just kind of just happened, you know, a day or two ago, or is kind of spotty throughout. We like to see persistency, so at least a couple of weeks worth of bullish power gauge rating. We also like it to be above a rising long-term trend. So if you'll recall that orange line, that's our long-term trend line. For a classic bull, we want the price bars not only to be above it, but we want the line itself to be rising. Pretty much the opposite for bears. You want a very bearish or bearish rating, persistent red, and you want it to be below a falling long-term trend. In terms of timing, we've outlined that the following three categories be strong. So money flow, relative strength, and industry group, we all like to have strong. And we also want to pay attention to our overbought, oversold indicator. And if you'll recall, when we were looking at the S&P, we said that when a stock's oversold and it's near the bottom band, it's likely to creep back up again. So obviously that would be a good entry point. And conversely, if you were looking to short a stock, you would want the opposite to be true. So you would want it to be close to the top band and overbought because it's more likely to dip back down. Important to keep in mind here, more often than not, growth does not occur in a smooth bell curve upwards. Rather, it follows this Y-cuff pattern of higher highs and higher lows. So the key thing to take away from this chart is that there's always going to be volatility and growth where you'll see, kind of ups and downs, but generally it's a trend upwards. If you're new to investing or, new to Chaikin, just to recognize that if you invest in a stock, it fulfills all the bullish criteria, you found a great entry point, and then it immediately goes down, not to worry and to just have faith that this is a normal occurrence within the stock market. Just briefly, this is our screener, and I will go over a live demo of this during the Q&A. But using the screener is going to do a lot of the work for you in terms of finding classic bulls and classic bears. So if you'll recall, we were looking at that set of 5 criteria. We can actually account for that in the screener so that the list of stocks we're looking at already check a lot of those boxes. So if you'd like, you can test it out on your own. I highly recommend entering a couple of criteria, and you'll see that the more criteria you enter in, the more narrow the list gets. So on the right-hand side, we see that we start with the Russell 3000. Our global filter settings were on. What do the global filter settings do? I'll go over this again in the quick tour, but basically they filter out stocks that are below certain levels of price, liquidity, and capitalization. So, I guess 885 was the number of stocks that fulfilled those criteria with the filter on. And we know that the filter's on because it's highlighted in blue. If it was highlighted in gray, then we'd know it's not active. Then we add a bullish power gauge rating, an oversold price level. You could also make that price level above a rising long-term trend if you wanted to be very closely aligned with the Finding Long and Short Ideas document. You could set money flow and relative strength to be strong. It's really up to you. I highly recommend entering in different sets of criteria and then going to this upper right-hand corner to click Save List. This will give you the option to give that list a name. So you might save these 7 stocks and say, this is my list of classic bulls from May 12th. And I would just put 5/12. The reason that this is so useful is so that you can monitor these stocks over time, maybe use the same criteria, but determine what criteria are most useful and important to you. And again, it just saves a tremendous amount of time. Think about if you were looking at all, 500 bullishly rated stocks and you had to pick which ones were the best candidates. The screener is allowing you to narrow down that list and only look at the best of the best. So I'm going to go through examples of a classic bull and a classic bear. And as you'll see in Mark's commentary, healthcare is one of the industries that's been doing really well, one of the sectors, along with financials and materials. So it's only apt that we have UNH in this group. It was also the bullish pick of the week, either last weekend or the weekend before. But either way, a good example to look at. So let's review that criteria. Does it have a very bullish or bullish rating with persistent green? Yes. I see that it was outperforming since, I guess, February. Is it above a rising long-term trend? Yes, that is satisfied as well. And we also see that it has strong Chaikin money flow, although it's dissipating a little bit, but that's understandable because it's also approaching an overbought position. It has strong relative strength and it's in a strong industry group. So the relative strength is located right here. We see that this significant period of green here means that it's outperforming the market. United Healthcare, just a couple of fun facts. They announced that they are withdrawing from the healthcare.gov program in 2017, which may have triggered some more confidence in investing that, a previously costly part of their business that was causing them to be at a loss will be eliminated in the future, which may have caused these recent price spikes. Either way, a stock like this, you always want to make sure in determining your entry and exit points that you're buying on the dips. So you're buying when it's oversold to make sure that you get a good price. So if I was looking at UNH and I had seen that the relative strength had just improved and that the money flow had just improved, what we call kind of a personality change, and it started to get a bullish power gauge rating, this oversold position here would be what we look at for
Unmuted.
Sorry about that. Lost sound for a second. All right, and in terms of bearish stocks, we want to keep the same Wyckoff pattern in mind, right? So growth or deterioration, it's never going to be a smooth bell curve, but instead for bears, we want to see a pattern of lower highs and lower lows. And for a bearish stock, I actually picked Solar City. This is a stock that I found early April when I used the screener to find a list of classic bears. And I was kind of happy, not that I'm ever rooting for a stock to do poorly, but that I had called this as a bear, only to find that on Monday they got absolutely crushed with earnings, and they fell 15% just on Monday with after hours trading, and they have not been doing well since. But in terms of classifying this as a classic bear, I see a very bearish rating with persistent red. It's below a falling long-term trend. It has weak money flow. Tons of people were selling this. Weak relative strength and a weak industry group. And another fun fact, if you were on Monday or Tuesday session, I mentioned that Jim Chanos, a very famous short seller, picked this as a short in the summer of 2015. He was not a big fan, so usually if he picks that stock to short, you don't want to be invested in it long. All right, now for a quick tour. If you simply go to the upper left-hand corner, if you want to search for stocks or add them to your watch list, you would simply type them in that white search bar with the magnifying glass. Once you type it in, you'll see that there's a plus sign option. Just click that plus sign to add it to a list, or even just to look at it, you would just press enter. In order to create new lists, pretty self-explanatory, click new list. You can name it. As I said, a lot of my lists that I have are saved from the screener. I always try and put dates in so I have kind of an idea of what I was looking for and when I was looking for it, so I can monitor their progress. I also mentioned this earlier, global filter settings allow you to adjust for price, liquidity, and capitalization. So you can change these or keep them off, but if you want to avoid stocks that are very inexpensive or very illiquid, you would simply turn these settings on, but it's really up to you. I personally keep mine off just because I want to look at every possible stock that I can. The filters and alert view is right next to your global filter settings. What this will allow you to do is see if there have been any types of buy or sell signals or other types of alerts in a particular list. So say you wanted to look for growth candidates in the financial sector, you might look to see if there were any buy signals triggered. That said, you don't want to act on signals alone. What we recommend doing is, performing your own analysis of a stock, and if you've already come to the conclusion that it's a great bullish candidate, might be a good entry point. These signals will really act as calls to attention rather than calls to action. So they might confirm an outlook you already had, or maybe kind of pique your interest into investigating a particular stock, but we don't recommend on acting on signals alone. In order to view previous signals on a chart, so the alerts view will show you signals that have been triggered recently, but if over a 1 or 5 year period you want to see when the stock has triggered those types of signals and how it's performed afterwards, then you would simply click the red and green triangles on the chart itself. Another common question we get, sorry I skipped over that, but people frequently ask if you can view all the signals at once, and the answer, unfortunately, for now is no. You do kind of have to switch between each just for now. If you want to drill down into the more in-depth explanation of the power gauge rating of a particular stock, you would simply click the white triangle with the circle around it here. You'll be able to see how a particular stock ranks in each category, and if you wanted to drill down even further, you would just click these plus signs to the left of each category. So you might see within financials, which is already very bullish, which are the most bullish individual factors for that stock. Finally, I just added this today, our new earnings information. We updated this a couple weeks ago and then again about a week ago so that you can see the earnings estimates for a particular stock as well as the past earnings performance. So the way that this has changed is that the earnings information to see kind of how it's likely to report, the trend, etc., you would just hover over this EPS symbol at the top. It's to the right of options. But to actually see the earnings information on the chart, you would actually just click this EPS button that is now located in between the crosshairs and the signals button. So you just click that, and you can see on the charts EPS. And just for your reference, if it's in green, that means they beat the estimate. If it's in gray, that means they met it exactly. And if it's in red, it means that they missed. Just, for your reference. Finally, our portfolio health check and power gauge reports. A portfolio health check is a way to kind of generate a summary of how a particular list is doing. So that might be the S&P 500. It could be your list of stocks that you currently hold. You would just click the piece of paper in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll be able to kind of get a quick summary of how it's doing, right? So how many bulls, how many neutral rated stocks, how many bears, how it compares against other industries, things like that. Whereas a power gauge will allow you to, a power gauge report, will allow you to drill down even further on a specific stock. So if you were more curious on why Netflix is rated bearishly and wanted kind of a more comprehensive explanation, you would simply generate a power gauge report. Both of these documents are savable, shareable. You can print it out. Anything you'd like. I highly recommend it. I definitely have people who ask me, oh, how's this stock doing? What does Chaikin think of it? And I can print out a document and go over it with them. And it's definitely a very, very great resource. Finally, back to where we started with the Resource Center, you would just click the stack of books, click Resource Center. You'll be brought to a page that looks like this. It says Chaikin Analytics Resources, and under Educational Webinars, if you want to watch this again, or you want to watch some of our other sessions like options or our open forum sessions, you would just click Subscriber Session Recordings, and it'll bring you directly to a YouTube page. I highly recommend doing this. Sometimes you want to fast forward through things or watch stuff from a couple months ago and see what we were talking about. Definitely go check that out. And if you want to schedule for future sessions, it would be the link immediately below. You can also look at the user guide, which has a lot of information, which I also recommend looking at, where you can see under product user guides and videos. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to switch to the desktop app and answer any questions you may have. Oh, that is my email. Here we go. All right, let's look at the questions. Great, I see a lot of options in swing traders. Any way to make those price bars larger? Great question, Mike. Pretty much what we would do, I'll just click that. You can zoom in. So, say I wanted to see this a little bit closer. I'm just clicking view and then zoom in. But I don't know if you actually just saw what happened, but when I zoomed in too much, the earnings information went away. So sometimes we get calls where people will say, I can't see the earnings information. And usually that is remedied by simply zooming out on your web browser. So you'll see it just came back on. So I don't know if that helped in terms of making the price bar larger, but it is a little bit easier to see, I guess, if you zoom in. But the price bar itself can't be expanded. Will the new program have a power gauge report on ETFs? Yes. A power gauge rating on the ETFs is coming soon. It's definitely on the horizon. It's in testing right now. They have it. They just have to make sure that it's perfect before we release it to everyone. But it's definitely coming soon. Oh, I see you said candlesticks would be awesome. That's another request that we've gotten from a lot of subscribers. But luckily, our team, the client success team, we meet frequently with the technology and product development team, and they're always looking for feedback on what people want, since we're kind of directly in contact with all of you. So we kind of have a running list of developments and improvements that we can make. So I definitely agree with you that candlesticks would be a good addition. What is EMA 21? EMA 21 is a 21-day exponential moving average, so it's kind of like a short-term average, right? So that's what our volatility bands are calculated around, whereas that orange line, it's a 200-day. So it's a more long-term indicator of stock performance. Hey, it's Harris with Chaikin. Zoom in on a 6 or 3 month. Oh, okay. Drawing trend lines. A lot of great requests. Yeah, trend lines have been very frequently requested. You can actually, I'm in GoToMeeting right now, but if I choose this, I can actually, should be able to draw. There we go. Yeah, you can draw with GoToMeeting. But yes, within the app itself, it would be much more useful. You can switch to a 5-year view. Let me erase those drawings. Pointer. Which I find valuable. I think certain stocks, I went over a particular one yesterday, I forget the ticker symbol, but somebody said, this was presented in a webinar as a bullish candidate, but I see that it hasn't been performing so well. Why would that be? And when we actually switched to the 5-year chart, we saw that in the past it had traded at much higher values and was kind of had dipped back down sharply, but was coming back up. So I said, okay, well, actually, this wouldn't be an unreasonable expectation given its past performance. Kind of a non sequitur, but I will look to see captions mean for each bar. Good question. So these little boxes here, what do each thing? First of all, I recommend looking in the user guide. So actually, I'm just going to minimize this and show you how to get to the user guide because it actually gives you a lot of information. I'm going to click the stack of books, and then I'm just going to click user guide. And when I look at the user guide, I can get these really great in-depth explanations of everything that you see on the chart. So if you were curious about EMA 21, Chaikin bands, things like that, you would simply look at that in chart display. If you're more interested in the screener, what the different criteria mean. I know this looks like a lot of information, but actually if you have specific questions and kind of navigate through this user guide, I will probably be able to answer a lot of the questions you may have. Let me go back to this. But what do each of these mean? Obviously, the high, low, close, I think are somewhat self-explanatory, where the stock peaked, so the highest price of the day, the lowest price of the day, and where it closed. The EMA 21, that's giving you the exact 21-day average, the long-term trend line, money flow, and overbought, oversold. It's giving you the exact score. So as I said, these 30 and 70 marker lines are here for your reference. But if you wanted to know on September 24th what was the exact score, you could see that, 60, 90. Hopefully that answered your question. Any other questions for now before we wrap up? I'll just briefly go over options play within Chaikin. Again, I really recommend attending our options session, but just briefly, if you click the options play module, Options Play is a separate company that we partner with, so all of the ratings that you see here are based on their own proprietary measurements and scores. But that said, generally a score over 100 is a good score, and the one that they place the green check mark in is their somewhat recommended strategy. But you can change all of these things. It's not saying that you have to do any of this, but they're really calculating it based on probability and risk. Generally, we do get questions on why it seems to favor bearish outcomes and put verticals. And we actually talked to a representative from Options Play, and I asked that exact question, and he said that dips in stocks are much more common than sharp spikes up. And also that the put verticals kind of like minimize the cost of your trade. So your risk is minimized if you're interested in those types of option strategies. And you can see here, if you press guide right here, it'll give you these blue flags, which will tell you what each kind of aspect of the options play module is telling you. You can also switch to the plain English tab here by clicking this right arrow, and it'll give you kind of a plain English explanation of what each trade strategy is outlining for you. The probability, the risk, the potential profits, things like that. And if you want, you can also modify the trade. So if you had a longer outlook, this might be getting into leaps, I suppose. But if you wanted to see what it would look like if you bought the call option for January of 2018, 2000, this is what it would look like. So I highly recommend kind of clicking around here. This is the screener. If you wanted to quickly put in some criteria, you could. This is some of the criteria that we had in the Finding Longs and Shorts document. So if you'll recall, this was kind of our checklist, right? We wanted bullish power gauge rating, above a rising long-term trend, and then we wanted money flow, relative strength, and industry to all be strong. So I actually just put that in here. My global filter is off, but we'll see how many we get. Wow, 87. That's a lot of stocks. Maybe I would put has bullish persistency, which is initially what was there. Wow, 17. All right, so that's actually a more manageable number of stocks to analyze. And maybe if I put my global filter on, I'll get even less. Let's try that. All right, 5 stocks. If you wanted, you would simply just go to Save List. So I could put in Bulls 512, hit Continue. And now I'm going to go to my workspace, and there it is. That's the list of stocks I actually just generated. And you might look at these individually, keep them in your watch list if you see some potential, and always keep in mind how to use overbought, oversold, as well as the Chaikin bands to find your entry points. All right. Any other questions? Last call. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Again, this recording will be available in the Resource Center. Hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us, support@chaikinanalytics.com, and we will get back to you. All right. Have a great day.